I can. Oh. Gotcha. I did it again where I got like the spinning circle on Twitch, so I thought I lost internet, but I went to Twitter right away and I refreshed Twitter and Twitter was working for me. So that's when I was like, uh-oh. Um, oh, Twitch is back up for me. I was like, why is it not showing my camera? And then I realized I left the Discord call thinking it might have been me. YouTube is live again. All right. I'm not gonna tweet out a new link for that though. It's whatever. Um, you were talking about Hydra though, and you said something about a tweet, and that was the last thing I heard. So I don't know what was picked up after that. Like I don't know what the tweet was either. So I yeah. Okay.
Mike. All right, so we're gonna take 3 of this. I saw a tweet, and it was about a similar conversation. It was about Hydra specifically, and it made me mad when I read it. But I think it could be an interesting conversation in general because it kind of is related to what we're talking about here. But the tweet was Hydra is closer to being the CDL GOAT than Simp, Shotzi, Kenny, etc. 5 major wins across 3 different teams and 2 different orgs is insane. And this was a quote tweet to Breaking Point. They put out the CDL major wins by team, and FaZe had 7, Thieves 4, NYSL 3, Ultra 3, Optic 2, Minnesota Surge, and LAG all have 1 each. And of course, you know, if you're looking at NYSL, then Hydra has all 3 of those major wins. And then he has 2 of those for LAT as well because of the 2 this year. So he has 5 major titles, which I think this person was just saying that he has 5. FaZe over an entire the CDL has 7. It's not including the home series, I believe, in 2020. I could be mistaken on that, but I believe that this is just when majors were introduced and then plus champs, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's just majors, but either way, the conversation is like, is Hydra closer to the CDL GOAT than Simp, Shotzi, Kenny, etc.? He is not closer than Simp. I would say he's not closer than Shotzi. I think he's better than Kenny, but I would not put him above Kenny in an all-time list. If he were to get to 2, though, right, that's kind of like where I'm going with this. If he gets 2 rings, Simp has 2 rings, Shotzi has 2 rings, Kenny has 2 rings. Hydra would have a season MVP in 2023. He would have another probably top 3 finish in MVP voting this season. He has potentially he could get Champs MVP because that's always open, and 2 rings on top of that. He's definitely in the top 10 probably at that point. I think it's one of those deals, and I don't know where you sit on this matter of like the talent is better than the resume, even if the resume is really, really good. And that's how I felt about Simp for a really long time. Like his resume is great. Like if you're just going by the resume, he has like a top 10, like you said, at worst top 15 resume. But then you look at the skill and you look at like how good he actually is, and you're like, oh, he's actually like probably one of the most talented players to ever play Call of Duty. And I think Hydra has that kind of potential. It's not like that's not a groundbreaking declaration because we've been talking about this kid since even before he came to America. So, what do you think about this whole Hydra? And to link it back to Celium, like if Celium were to get two, and with the accolades and the skill that we know he has, where does that kind of put them?
I do think the Hydra's an interesting one. If he does get to uh, two rings, I kind of have the similar mindset of you. Like he seems like a player that even if he doesn't get that second ring this year or ever, like he's always going to be remembered just for how incredibly talented he was regardless, and that's going to be something that that probably, again, if he doesn't get that second ring, like that probably helps him on some all-time lists just because of how insane he is, for lack of a better term. I do think it is important to remember though that, like, at a bare minimum, as it stands right now, he's the only EU player with a ring. So like I think it's not even close to say that he's the greatest European Call of Duty player of all time.
No offense to Bance, like, and
That's
he held the mantle after Tommy,
Yep.
and Swanee I think had like the highest potential for a long time, but like I don't know how many event wins Bance has in his career. I would wager to say that Hydra probably has more already, at least at the major level, not like in total, but like. But yeah, like Hydra has 5 major wins. He has champs. Like he's undoubtedly the best European player, and he's by far the most talented.
So I think, and that could very much change. The landscape in the CDL is changing. We have these, the Miami team with all Spanish roster. We have potentially some more European or French talent coming in with gentlemates over the years. So like that conversation could change if Hydra's career literally ended, but I think we're both of the mind that, Hydra's only going to continue to, rack up the accolades and tournament titles and whatnot. So it seems like, at a bare minimum, he has set the floor for his career as greatest European player of all time. It's just stacking on top of that. And then how does he, fit into the, all-time Call of Duty list for all players in the world? It could be the recency bias here speaking, but if LAT win this event, I do think there would be some people who would potentially put Hydra above Abizi in an all-time list. I don't think I would agree with that, and I do think that would be greatly impacted by the recency bias, but it would be a three-peat and 3 straight events. They would both have 2 rings. So we can revisit that after champs, but I wouldn't put Hydra above Simp just yet. I do think that that's taking it a bit far in the context of the tweet you mentioned. But I mean, again, end of the day, that just shows just how much this champ stuff means and how big of an impact it truly can have. In regards to Celium, I would probably have to think a little harder, but I do know like some of these players that, at least in the 2 ring category, like Aches, I love Aches. I love, what he meant for the Call of Duty community and everything like that. Arcity's JCap, I guess you would count Kenny as an AR for his 2 rings, but like those are the AR players with 2 rings. I think most people would probably say Celium is the most talented AR player out of those guys. I think some old heads might argue like prime JCap, and that's like, BO1 JCap basically, or even before he was winning the rings. But I think that could it'd be at least a conversation, whether you agree or not. And I don't even know if I agree, but it's something that would be talked about, at least in regards to Celium if he does get a second ring. But at the same time, then if Celium gets a second ring, Draza's getting a second ring. So then where does Draza fit into that conversation too? Very interesting topics there. This is the fun of this legacy talk. And these are things I wasn't even thinking about really talking heading into this show, and we're already talking about it. And, that's just the fun of it.
Let's just clean up the one ring conversation real quick because we've already talked about Hydra, we've talked about Celium, we've talked a little bit about Dashy, but like Envoy, Draza, Dashy, Hook, Slasher, these are players that also have one ring going into this event. I think we both think it is a uber long shot that Slasher gets number 2 here. But
hey, I think people thought it was an uber long shot. Aches would get number 2 at World War II champs too. So,
but if he were to get that, then like you just listed off the best ARs or some of the best ARs in COD history, obviously not including Octane and Formal because they each have 1. But if Slasher would get 2, then we're having different conversations. We're also having a lot different conversation in general because this would be the most unpredictable champs winner of all time, even far surpassing Optic last year or Denial. No, Denial was really good going into that champs, but I don't know who else would even qualify at that point.
It would be EG World War II.
Yeah, and EG was also kind of like ramping it up at the end. Like people said, like, no, they're going to be really good, in the practices leading up to champs. So this would be a pretty incredible turnaround. I don't see it happening. I don't think you do either. It is interesting to think about Hook, Dashy, Draza, and Envoy, though. Envoy is going to get about as little credit as one could probably get, probably along with Draza in this case, if he were to win his second ring. Dashy would get, a lot of credit, I would imagine, because he's definitely going to drop numbers and like he's one of the more talented AR players. He's another player that would be in that conversation of like, is he the best AR player of all time if he gets his second ring? Hook, his legacy completely changes, I think.
I was just gonna, yeah.
Like his career is weird. Like if you look at his team history, like to win the first CDL champs and then the stuff that happened the next 2 or so years, he's kind of in the wilderness. He started this season in Challengers. He gets benched, brought back, he got released, I think, outright. He gets released by Optic for a guy that he replaced in the first place and then replaces him again. If he were to win champs, where does that kind of put Hook in all of this conversation? Nade Shot tweet notwithstanding, where he said that Hook was like one of the most talented players of all time.
You stole exactly what I was gonna say. That was literally what I was like. Hook wins his second ring, and he like completely changes the narrative around his entire career. And I do think, it's different depending on what era of COD fandom you're in. For people like us, like saying something like Hook could be considered one of the greatest of all time, that feels like a, foregone conclusion. Like if you were to tell me that 10 years ago, I'm like, yeah, this kid's freaking nasty. Like obviously that's where he's going to end up, but he's obviously dealt with a lot, gone through a lot, and it hasn't all gone according to plan. If he does get that second ring, that's what I was thinking as you were talking, is the Nade Shot tweet of like, Hook is, paraphrasing here, but it was along the lines of like, Hook is a player that doesn't come around very often, and if you get the chance to acquire him, you don't pass that up. Essentially, what it was. And he he gets that second ring. He solidifies that conversation, and that's where his name. I already think, even if he doesn't get a second ring ever in COD, like he's already considered one of the best Call of Duty, one of the best FPS players of all time, just because he did have that success in Halo as well. Obviously, if you're going to have that conversation, like Formal's number 1 far and away, but then like Hook is at least mentioned in that regard. Same with Shotzi, because of Shotzi's success in both. But like Hook he might not be at the very top of that list, but he's at least mentioned. And I think that only is solidified further with a second ring. I think it's it's going to be tough for Optic, but stranger things have happened, and I think if Optic did win champs this year, I would be most happy for Hook. Especially you laid it out perfectly. Like dude was literally in Challengers to start this year, potentially not even on a CDL team, And then he's gone through a lot even this year in terms of getting picked up by Optic when it felt like before that he was dominating challengers and it was going to be a question of what team does he get a chance on. It felt like it might be a bottom of the barrel team. And then he was going to go through the cycle of like, potentially struggling on that team and having to deal with all that, yada, yada. Gets the Optic chance, dropped by Optic, gets picked back up. Like, it's been a roller coaster. And I would be really happy for him if Optic were able to get the job done.
All right, so we're nearing about an hour and a half in. I want to wrap this up, but is there anybody else that you think is of notable or honorable mention to either have a ton to gain or a ton to lose at Champs 2025?
I think we kind of glossed over it just because you just mentioned it, but Envoy is an interesting one just because, like you said, like I feel like if they do get the job done here, it would be like he would almost be like an afterthought, it feels like, and he would be someone who has 2 rings. So that is an interesting conversation there. I do think Slasher, you mentioned it in general. I think the bigger thing with him, regardless of exactly how Carolina plays at this event, is just a question of, is this the last time we ever see Slasher compete? The likely answer is no, just because I think even if Carolina struggle at Champs, they'll at least have that roster at EWC. But they did make a change last year at the end of the year when Beans played at EWC. So it's not out of the question that this could potentially be Slasher's last event. If it's not, it could be his second to last event. I hope it's not. I think, he seems to be the guy. He's got his robotics degree and whatever. He seemingly knows what he's going to do after life in competitive COD ends. And I think he's going to want to extend his career as long as he can. And I still think he's a pretty solid player. So I just think that's, is this the last hurrah for Slasher is just a question in general, regardless of their placing at Champs. And yeah, I don't think there's really anybody else outside of these guys that we mentioned. It is, 22 players don't have a ring. I think the one of the 22 there is Scrap already labeled that and outlined all that. 4 of the 8 teams at Champs, Boston, Miami, Vancouver, and Toronto, don't have any Champs winners. So if one of those teams somehow pulled something off at Champs, we would get 4 completely new ring bearers in COD esports. And I do think of that list, Vancouver is very interesting. Just kind of, what I mentioned earlier there when we were talking about the lack of marketing or whatever, I guess brings us a little full circle. Is just like, we don't know what to expect from Vancouver because it's been so long since we last saw them in action. And if Vancouver does get like a last place finish at Champs here, does that like completely invalidate everything they did earlier this year with the magical run they went on after getting Neptune in the squad? So I do think that's an interesting conversation. I guess to the same degree, something else to keep in mind, the quote unquote home court advantage, or home field cheese, however you want to phrase it. Event's not technically in Toronto, but it's a home event for Toronto Ultra in most people's eyes. Is that something here where Toronto gets the job done in Canada, similar to Optic getting the Champs win in Texas last year? I guess that's something else to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, and then we can complain about it after the fact because that happened. I think Miami would be very interesting if they were to win. Of course, any of these teams winning is interesting in its own right, but if an all-European team were to win Champs, and this specific all-European team, which did not really seem to have a lot of life during like the Major 2 qualifiers at Major 2, it just felt like they kind of ran their course. We thought super highly of Real, still do. Super has been a revelation this season. Rincourt, we've talked about it, probably going to win Rookie of the Year, or definitely going to be one of the finalists, the top 2 or top 3. But again, like going back to the all-European thing, like they would be on the very short list of EU players to win champs, and then to do it together, to do it as an all-Spanish team, it's pretty, like, it'd be a pretty ridiculous outcome. I don't see it happening. Again, we've talked about like how likely we think some of these champs winners are. They're in the, we have no clue what they're going to do. But I think of the somewhat, I guess, realistic champs, like I wouldn't say it's likely or anything, but somewhat realistic, they'd have like among the craziest champs win. Anything else before we get out of here?
Real quick, Breaking Point just tweeted this 12 minutes ago. It's one of those blue pill versus red pill things. This is one that I think the community's going to go crazy over, because it's literally, they posted it at 4:30, so 13 minutes ago. So hasn't really kicked in yet, but it says the choice is yours. And the blue pill is John, Scump, Zuma, and Apathy. The red pill is Simp, Shotzi, Hydra, and Abizi. Which one you picking? Gut reaction, go.
I mean, it's the red pill, but yeah.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's crazy.
I feel like they just put Scump on that team, and Scump and Zuma just for the interactions.
But they did they like that? I mean, that's kind of like, I think it's, we're not going to spend too much time talking about it now, but like that's the eras, like that's really like 4 of the best SMGs from pre-CDL era, 4 of the best SMGs in the CDL era. Yeah. And, not even looking at numbers or anything, I think it's red pill right away, and that's kind of crazy and a little scary.
The speed that the red pill would be moving at is that's insane. But yeah, that, I mean, I've always thought like I'm one of those people that believes that the players get better and better over time. Like, I think there are valid arguments for the players that came up during like the original MW2 or like COD 4, that they were very talented players, but like obviously like Call of Duty has evolved, and they're the current players, the best of the best, are kind of superhuman, even comparison to the very best players of a different era. And I think that kind of proves it. Like Scump, I think, is like one of those players where he could slot in on either team and people will be kind of fine with the outcome. Zuma and John and Apathy, they all had these very high peaks. And I was also thinking, when you were talking about Envoy, like how he would win 2 champs and like he would be kind of a footnote, Apathy is kind of the blueprint of that. Like Apathy has had 2 rings for years and years now, and he's just never really gotten the same level of respect, in terms of like that, the 2 ring club. But I just figured I'd mention that before we get out of here.
Yeah.
But that does it for today's show. Obviously, a little bit longer of one, and but this is just a fun topic. Obviously, we probably will break it down a little bit after the fact of like whose legacies did change considerably at champs. I think somebody's is like, that's just how these things go. There's only been, I believe, 12 champs. I think this might be the 12th, because it's 20. We don't count COD XP. We've never counted COD XP. So 2013 is the first champs. It's 2025. That's 12 or 13, I think. And obviously this is the 6th CDL champs, if I'm not mistaken. 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 6 CDL champs. And there haven't been that many like multi-time winners. Like you listed it off, and there's a dozen or something around there for multi-time champions. There's a good chance that we're gonna have a first-time winner at champs this year, unless FaZe wins, which would be pretty interesting. I don't think we covered that aspect of it, that they would be kind of.
I'd argue this is as good of a chance that we have the first repeat, at least from an organization standpoint, in the CDL era, because FaZe, Optic, or Thieves win, like, that those are, your repeats there for an organization standpoint. Obviously, Dallas Empire and NYSL can't win again, but other teams they got a good shot.
Yep. And we will be back. I believe we're going to do a live show Sunday. We might do it before then, but the podcast will be going up on Monday, and that will be our champs preview. It'll probably be a little bit of a longer episode, I would imagine, too. But we're going to try to break down the tournament from all angles, and we're doing it. Usually we do the champs preview or the event preview midweek, but because champs starts, I believe, on Thursday, if we do the show on Wednesday and it goes up on Thursday morning, we don't think that people really have enough time to listen to it, to kind of digest it. It'll just be like right from preview into the actual game. So we believe that if we do it over the weekend and it goes out on Monday, that you actually have a few days to listen to it or watch it if that's your thing. But that's the plan right now. We'll be back sometime this weekend, and the podcast will be up on Monday morning. Please like, subscribe, or follow the podcast feeds wherever you're listening or watching on. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We're also on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Search up Ego Chall Podcast to do so. We've had daily videos for the last few weeks on the channel, and trying to do that as long as we can. I think once we get to the off season, it's going to suck. It's going to be very, very difficult to do that. But as long as we can, I'd like to try to do the daily videos. So please subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you could. Follow us on Twitter at jbank with 2Ks, at Preston Byers, and the podcast Twitter's at Ego Chall Podcast. You can watch the live streams on YouTube. You can watch the live streams at twitch.tv/Ego Chall Podcast. You can also follow Bink on Twitch, twitch.tv/jbank with 2Ks. And like I said, the next show will be sometime this weekend. And then we'll be back to talk about champs after that. But that does it for me. Bink, take it away.
Yep. Thank you guys as always for all the support. We really appreciate it. And yeah, I had fun talking today. Even, we're saying the champs preview is going to be a bit of a longer episode, but today's was a bit of a longer one too. And that's just, we're in champ season, and that's the gravity of this. And there was we had some good topics today, I feel like, and there's even some stuff that I wasn't even thinking about that just came up during the show itself. So I had fun with it. Hope you guys had fun listening, watching along. If you guys got any thoughts in the comments or anything like that you want us to potentially address in the champs preview show, comment in the YouTube videos or anything like that. And even there was somebody in one of the breakout videos who commented on our all-star picks, and somebody said like Shotzi should be an all-star, they think, and I replied to it saying like let me know how and why, and we can have that conversation in the comments too. And if it's a good combo, we can bring it over to the podcast itself. So if you guys are thinking anything ahead of champs, let us know. We can maybe tie into the show too. But other than that, yeah, champs is quickly coming up, even though it feels like it's been a while. And we'll be here to break it all down for you. I'm really excited for the preview show too. Should be some good stuff to talk about there. But yeah, until then, we'll see you guys when we do go live again. And remember to send the chow.